Yo, I'm Zoe, and welcome to my No Life King build video. In this guide, I'll help cover several things to help you understand and use this build in your own way to help succeed in combat, being the utilities and playstyle of this build, which talents and mantras to take, and finally any armors or gems that can give you an extra boost in combat. Note that Deepwoken is subject to balance changes typically every week, and this build may not function as expected in the future. Instead, this build should serve more as inspiration and insight to how you can improve your next build. But in the end, it's your choice to do whatever you want. With that being said, let's get into the video. First, I'll cover which attributes I chose to invest in. Here are my stats. As you can see, I have 80 strength, 50 fortitude, 60 agility, 40 willpower, 96 medium, and 1 thundercall. And I'll explain these shortly. This build revolves around using a No Life King enchant, and being very aggressive while putting up a lot of pressure in a fight. Movement is the key to how this build works. While maintaining movement speed, it's extremely important to constantly put up pressure so you lower any chances of you getting hit, and let your No Life King enchant maintain sustainability throughout the fight. Naturally, this does mean that you will require a lot of agility for many important talents, and that give you greater return on parries or dodges. Taking a medium weapon with high attack speed is preferable, but once again, your playstyle may be different. If you tend to stick with lower attack speed weapons, then it is no problem to do so. Strength is your main source of mantra damage, both extremely relevant in the meta and containing many utilities as of currently. Fortitude is generally a great choice as of now for its many useful talents and large number of health gained per talent, so I'd recommend spreading your points into Fortitude a bit. Willpower is also quite important, as the No Life King enchant is set to Sanity. There's a certain note that's preferable that I will cover in a bit. And finally, the 1-point Thundercall serves one main purpose, counters ever-changing Aegis. As a mantraless build, the number of mantras that you already use are quite low, so it does not hurt to take a 0-star lightning mantra for both movement and combat and countering a fatal talent. Basically, keep in mind that you're playing for the heals given to you, and applying constant pressure is how you should be playing with this build. Next, let's cover the relevant talents that make this build as efficient as it is. Talents will be sorted per rarity and then per attribute, and I recommend pausing the video at any time to take note. And starting off, the single most important common talent for this build is Blade Dancer. This talent removes your dodge cooldown in every hit, which syncs very well with a certain rare talent that I will mention later. Some other very important common talents are Steady Nerves for extra return on successful dodges, Endurance Runner to maintain high movement speed at low HP, Duelist Stance for extra return on successful parries, Strong Hold for less punishment on block, Harsh Response for less punishment on getting parried, and Last Resort for damage increase during low HP. Common talents that make up the baseline of the build are arguably as important as rare talents, and you should pick them up if you ever see them in your rolls. This list excludes some other important talents like Engage and such, so keep that in mind if you ever try this build out. Now, onto the rare talents. There are several extremely important ones that you should take. Tap Dancer is one of the most important rare talents in this build. This syncs perfectly with Blade Dancer so that you get a roll twice per every hit on an enemy. Concussion is very relevant mainly in PvP and PvE, and with a weapon with high attack speed, this will become more and more important to take. Strong Stern is meant to directly counter concussion as well. It's that important. Bulldozer adds onto the reward of flourishing enemies and makes the window for punishment larger. And Spine Cutter is also great because of the agility talents that you take. Roll cancels will be frequent in number per battle, and this gives you a little extra damage for your playstyle. Some other very important rare talents are To the Finish for extra sustainability, Observation due to the reliance of roll cancels, Safety Dance to increase your invincibility frames, and Speed Demon to deal bleed damage per attack. These pair quite nicely with your common talents to create a tanky build that is extremely agile and rewarding on dodge. Fishman is also good to take, and is quite a surprising pick for most people, but I will explain that shortly. And finally, the legendary talents are what make or break this build. It's very important to take the following. Showstopper grants you the upper hand in combat if your opponent dodges. Vanishing Follow-Up closes the gap whenever you flourish an enemy. Exoskeleton reduces the damage by a hefty amount and is generally a must pick. Neuroplasticity reduces the mantra cost and also grants you a wildcard slot for a mantra of your choosing. And Return to the Dark Ages is for extra damage reduction and it's worth the trade-off in this build. Now, you're probably wondering why I didn't choose Condition Runner. Due to how No Life King pairs with Condition Runner, the healing is reduced quite a bit and does not work as good as it did in its prime state. So you will always want to pick up Fishman. Fishman and No Life King stack, and when you're always in a pickle, you can run away to any body of water and gain 2 to almost 3 times the regen that you would normally gain just for having the enchant equipped, making this a literal king in water fights. Just make sure you always have food on you in case you're fighting a gluttony user in the water. Anyways, here's the full talent list. Now that I have explained the required talents and their viability on the build, let's jump into the mantras and what gems I use on them. First off, Strong Left. Probably my least used mantra in this kit. After the recent Strong Left nerfs, the end lag puts you at a disadvantage. If you miss, you could end up being punished. I currently have a Blush gem on it to give me the cooldown back if I do land it. In a fight, you want to use Strong Left during a mix-up. Fainting it can be the key to landing it in battle, resulting in a guard break or free damage on your opponent, making it a useful mantra for people who like to turtle and play more defensively than others. Next up, Master's Flourish. My personal favorite, and always one that throws your opponent off guard. I currently have a Bloodless gem on this one for the immense heal it gives when it lands. Master's Flourish does incredible damage while keeping out the pressure due to the wonky hitbox and parry time it has. Pair this up with a Flourish into Vanishing Follow-Up, you can land yourself a free couple hits. Most people don't know, if you feint this and use it right after, it completely removes the starting protocols and sound of the wind-up, making a good way to throw your opponent's senses off. Now, for my lightning mantra, Jolt Grab. I have a blue gem, blast spark, and 3 perfect lenses on it. This mantra is perfect for engaging back into a fight. Getting pressured? No worries, back up and use this mantra and now you have the upper hand. If you get parried? No sweat, you'll have the priority over the other player on who swings first. Just make sure to use it in the right situation. Now, fourth up on my list, Exhaustion Strike. I personally love this mantra due to how fast and easy it is to use. I have a blue gem on it due to the amount of ether it takes without one. This mantra is great for any playstyle your opponent is using. Here's a scenario. Your opponent dodges you. During that dodge, your opponent will either gain distance or re-engage into the fight. If they choose to re-engage, you can immediately use Exhaustion Strike for a free hit. Doing so could lead you to throwing your opponent off and landing a free M1. Now, Rapid Punches. Not much to say here. I currently have a Bloodless on it due to it being a multi-hit move. This mantra is good for a free couple hits and some free heals. It's a good way to apply some pressure in a fight. Next up, Shoulder Bash. I have a win gem on this one to the heavy amounts of usage for it and combo extension. Pair this with Speed Demon and a critical attack for some free extra damage, making this mantra very good at closing a gap and getting in some free hits. Now, I don't have much to say about Reinforce. It's good for the damage reduction, and the slight heals it gets. Unfortunately, I didn't get Grand Support on this build. I currently have a placeholder gem on it, but a blue gem would be preferred. Now here are my gems and what level I have on each mantra. That is about it for mantras. You could always switch out any of these mantras with what you currently like or whatever fits your playstyle. Now, as we reach the end of this video, I would like to talk about some of the pros and cons of this build. As for the pros of this build, it has an insane amount of regen and survivability. It has lots of mobility, and it can withstand most group fights and ganks. It also excels in water battles, and it can play defensively and or aggressively. If you pair this with the Multiplicity enchant, it removes some of the downsides this build has, and can even hold its own weight in some of the most dire situations. Now, onto the cons. You have 2 times the blood loss, but you can counteract some of this blood loss with the Multiplicity enchant, which I previously mentioned. But still be wary of bloodthirsty users, as they could wipe out your blood. You are also always stained, and if you aren't precautious, you could always wipe in the depths. Go Blindseer and carry an extra enchanted weapon on you. This build can also get outranged by heavies and spears, meaning you might have to adapt in a way to beat your opponent by playing more defensively. And All the Dead Gods, which is a huge counter to this build, as it applies anti-heal. After the recent nerf, it's not as good as it once was, but it's still a huge counter, so be wary of it. But that is about it for the pros and cons. This build has insanely high survivability due to the damage reduction and the regen you get. I love this build, and I hope to see some more people out there using No Life King. If you like this type of video, please comment below. Any criticism is appreciated to explain what I do and how I do things. I love making edits and doing projects like this. Thank you all for tuning in and watching this. This took me quite a while to make. I'll leave you guys off with a couple of my favorite clips of this build in battle to see how it performs and how I play with it. But that's been all. I'm Zill, and thanks for watching.